Thank you very much, Carolina. I would like to thank Manuel, Carolina, and all the chairs for inviting us, and also to give this opportunity to give this talk. It's really a pleasure. So, as Carolina said, today, Luisa and I, we are going to talk a little bit about the relationship between light, sleep, and age in São Paulo, Brazil. Next, please. So the light-dark cycle is the main synchronizer of the human circadian system. The photic information is received by photoreceptors in the eye, and this message is sent to the central pacemaker that drives output rhythms. One of them is the sleep and wake behavior. Next. There is a range of physiological and behavioral factors that influence phase shifts across lifespan. Overall, we see there is a tendency towards a phase delay during adolescence, and as age advances, we see a tendency towards an earlier phase. And one of our main questions is to understand what is the role of light into these phase shifts that comes with age. Next. And why study this in São Paulo? So São Paulo has several features that allow us to study this interaction between age, light, and sleep in a more light control environment. São Paulo has a diverse population in terms of ancestry and socioeconomical background. We are exposed to almost the same natural environmental conditions, such as being in the same time zone and also under the same solar cycle. And because of the city latitude, there is a minimum of seasonal variations over the years. So all of these factors taken together allow us to study the effects of age in a more natural light control context. Next. And we divided this presentation into two major goals. The first one is going to be presented by me, in which we wanted to investigate the associations between light, circadian, and sleep timing in a cohort that is representative of São Paulo city population in terms of age, sex, and socioeconomic status. And Luisa is going to talk about the impact of light exposure on the next sleep episode in adolescents. So the São Paulo Epidemiologic Sleep Study, also known as EPSONO project, is a cohort that is collected every 10 years. And as I say, it is representative of São Paulo population. Today, I'm going to present the results of the last edition that was conducted in 2018. The EPSONO included participants of both sexes, aged between 20 and 8 years old, and pregnancy, lactation, night shift work, and diseases or conditions that could impact autonomy were considered as exclusion criteria. So after applying some filters from the entire sample, we end up with a subset of 404 participants. They wore an actimeter during 7 days, 5 weekdays, and 1 weekend. And these are the social demographic characteristics of this subset. They had a mean age of almost 50 years old. 60% of them were females, and data collection took place between 2018 and 2019. And from the devices, we extracted the information about light, sleep timing, and circadian phase. So we use the non-parametric variable to calculate the timing of the lowest exposure to light. We use sleep onset and offset as a marker of sleep timing. We also calculated the predicted in-light melatonin onset as a marker of circadian phase. And we use the light acrophase as a measure of the timing of the greatest exposure to light. And as we can see in the graph, as age advances, as age progresses, we see that all of these markers, they were earlier. And I would like to highlight that within these two age groups, the younger ones, we didn't see any significant difference among them, except for the circadian phase measure. And then to test the potential associations between light, circadian phase, and sleep timing, we built two statistical models. The first one was a moderation model in which we wanted to answer the question if the effect of age on sleep and circadian timing was dependent on the light information, Or in the second model, there was a mediation model in which we investigate if this effect was not dependent on this light information, but was passing through light timing to influence circadian phase and sleep timing. And what we saw was that this effect was in fact being mediated by the light information. So older the participant, earlier was the timing of the greatest exposure to light, and earlier was the circadian phase and sleep onset. For both outcomes, around 30% of this effect was passing through light to influence these outcomes, and the remainder was a direct effect of age on circadian phase and sleep onset. And then we tested the same models, now using the timing of the lowest exposure to light as the third variable, and the sleep offset as the outcome. And we saw the same result. So older the participant, earlier was the timing of the lowest exposure to light, and earlier was the sleep offset. But we observed a major contribution of these indirect effects. So most of this effect was passing through light to influence the timing in which the participants woke up. So as major conclusions of this first study, we saw that the age of 40 years seems to be a key turning point for these earlier tendencies. The light exposure seems to play a secondary role in this age-related advance of circadian phase and sleep onset, but it seems to have a major contribution in the timing in which individuals wake up with age. And now Luisa is going to talk a little bit, how are these relationships in another specific age group of adolescents?
So I would like to thank to be here. So as Julia said, my name is Luisa Lopes, and the main goal of my part of the presentation is try to achieve some level of answer to the following question. So how do real life, so something similar to what Deborah said, so how real life patterns of light exposure affect the sleep behavior in adolescents? So why the studying about adolescent sleep and light? Well, I bring here the perfect star model that brings together biological and social factors that influence the amount of sleep in this age range. So first of all, they have slowed sleep pressure rise, which means it take for them a little bit longer to feel asleep. And there is also a delayed chronotype. So as Julie said, there is a delayed in the circadian phase. And regarding to life, during the adolescence, there is a higher sensitivity to light, which means that difference in light exposure can affect it more their circadian phase, which can be even seen in the melatonin secretion patterns. And we have to put it all together with the social pressure they're living with and the mismatch with the school start time. So putting it all together, result is a short and yield time sleep and an insufficient amount of sleep considering the recommendations for the year age. So trying to achieve an answer for your question, these stood here, we recruited 35 students from the same high school. The average age for a sample was 16 years old, a majority of females, as always. And something that's important to put in perspective here is they all enrolled at the same high school, so we have some level of consistency regarding socioeconomic status and daily schedules. So the school start time for all of them was 7:30 in the morning and ended it at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So the methods were similar to Epsilon cohort. So they use an actimeter for school days and 2 free days. And our data collection took place in September of 2021. And it means it was spring in Brazil, and we have a photo period of around 12 hours. So through actigraph data, we extracted sleep measurement, so sleep onset, offset, and total duration of sleep. Light exposure patterns, also mean and minutes up in light greater than 500 luxes, and as well a proxy for chronotype that we considered here as the mid-sleep on 3 days, corrected for sleep debit. So to better understand how timing of the day could influence the next sleep episode, we divided the 24-hour period of the day in 4 intervals. So 6 a.m. to noon was considered morning, noon to 6 p.m. afternoon, 6 p.m. to midnight 9, and midnight to 6 a.m. to the next day dawn. And what we did, so we built several generalized linear models to better understand how time could predict the next sleep episode. So the first of the sets, we did all of the light parameters, predicting the sleep parameters, but using as a covariant just the type of the day. And then we repeated all over the regressions, considering the proxy for chronotype as a covariant as well, to see if somehow the chronotype, so their circadian phase, could affect the way that light was affecting the next sleep episode. So here, let's start with the results. Here we have the photo period back in the data collection. And here the sleep patterns that we saw. Here in the arrows, the average of sleep onset and offset comparing weekdays and free days. And as we expected, they have an earlier sleep onset and offset during the weekdays, that was the school days, and a shorter sleep duration. And even in free days, when they have more opportunity to sleep, the amount of sleep they had in average was not enough considering the recommendations. That would be around 9 hours per night. And here all the graphs together, so putting the sleep patterns and the light exposure patterns together. And what we saw, that the light exposure followed somehow the sleep schedule, so it started earlier and ended early as well during school days, and the end would the start and the end of it during free days was later. But something that is interested to look at in this graph is that when they have more opportunity to choose their activities, so here around when the school ended in weekdays, and it's even clear when you look at the free days, the standard deviation was really higher, so the variation was higher. But when we look at it in a statistically manner, what we saw was just one difference. So they were more exposed to bright light during free days in the afternoon. And here we considered bright light as light greater than 500 luxes. And now the results that we saw in our sets of regressions. So here, the unadjusted model, which means that we didn't consider the chronotype, and the results were basically that higher average intensity of light, especially in morning and afternoon, affected the next sleep episode with this following result. So it was earlier sleep onset and offset. And how much of it? So it can be quantified. So if we increase it, the average intensity in 100 lux, the next sleep episode would be around 8 to 10 minutes earlier. But if the increase happens during night or dawn, the effect was the opposite as expected. So we would see a later sleep onset and a shorter sleep duration with no effect in the sleep offset. And this is something that we have to look at in the next adjusted model. So here we included the proxy for chronotype to see if somehow the sleep phase, actually the circadian phase, could affect the way light affects sleep. And what we saw, the effect is remaining even after controlling for chronotype. And for me, this is the nicest result we have here, because if we don't consider a chronotype in this result, we could think that maybe the statistically effect of light in sleep could be something behavioral. So someone who is sleep earlier and wake up earlier as well have a better a bigger window opportunity to be exposed to light, and it would be seen statistically in the results. But when we included the chronotype, we can see that it's also involving a physiological mechanism. And what we can take as a potential intervention here is that maybe increasing daytime light exposure can be a way to address the chronic sleep deficit in adolescents. So I bring here just a couple results we have, but you're all welcome to see the full content because this work is already published in a Journal of Sleep Research. So now a couple message that me and Julia would like you to take home today. So light is a key environmental factor that influences sleep in all ages. The indirect effects of life proves that age-related changes in behavior actively contribute to advancing in sleep and circadian timing. And interventions that focus on timing are welcome, but it depends on the context of the subject's life story and the time of the day. We would like to thank the chairs for the opportunity to be here today, our mentors, the financial support, and for sure our sleep group here in Brazil. You're all welcome to ask any questions if you have in the end of the sessions. Thank you.